Veronica Cisneros. Today's guest is totally my sister from another mister. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist, complete badass, mother of 4, serial entrepreneur, underline the serial. She is the owner and founder of the Peaceful Sleeper and the Peaceful Mind Counseling Center. Like many high-achieving women, she didn't realize she had ADHD until adulthood and motherhood, which is totally where I'm at right now. Chrissy, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to chat today. And talking about adult ADHD and women is seriously one of my favorite subjects to talk about because so many of us are just running in circles and we're busy and we're scattered. And we start to feel bad about ourselves because we don't realize, like, I'm actually dealing with a thing and it has a name and it has a diagnosis and it has a treatment protocol. And this actually is such a badass trait that you have. So you need to stop feeling bad about it and start embracing the power that is the female ADHD brain. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So I've been like, there's been a couple things, as therapists, we're both therapists. So as therapists, yeah, we know exactly what we're looking for in patients of ours, and there's things that have come up for me that have always come up for me. I mean, I think my parents told me I was ADHD like a long time ago, but mine was never tested. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. This is just my personality. And yet I have like 50,000 Post-it notes and 50,000 to-do lists. And I'm going to go ahead and take these Post-it notes and then I'm going to put it on the Trello board. And then I'm just going to burn these Post-it notes because I'm sure the deadline has already passed. So, screw it. Right. And so it's
you're going to not look at the Trello board.
I'm not going to, not ever. Ever. Just tell me what to do. Tell me what to do. Tell me when my deadline is. And as long as you say my deadline was yesterday, I'll get that shit done today. Right. Yes. But if you tell me it's like 2 weeks from now, it's like, okay, you're just going to have to remind me because more than likely it's not going to get done.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you've accomplished so much as a therapist, entrepreneur, mom of 4. Could you share with us your journey to discovering how did you discover you had ADHD and how's it impacted your professional life? And personal life?
Yeah. Okay. So I did not realize that I had ADHD for the longest time. And the first hint of it was probably 10 years ago. And this is a funny story because I was working as a therapist then. I had a client that had a lot of anxiety and we made the decision, like, you should see a psychiatrist. It's probably time to start medication. And so she came back and she was like, yeah, she diagnosed me with anxiety, but she also thinks that I have ADHD. And I was like, ADHD, I never would have pegged that. Like, tell me what she pinpointed. She was like, well, I do this and this and this. And she starts listing off things. And in my mind, I'm like, that's normal. That's normal. That's normal. That's normal. I do that. I do that. I do that. And I was like, dang it, I have ADHD. Your psychiatrist just diagnosed my ADHD. So of course I did not say that in the session, but it kind of got my wheels turning and I was like, okay. But I didn't really put much thought into it. It made sense of some things in my childhood. Like I was very active, but I was the first girl after 3 boys. And so I think a lot of ADHD girls get lost in the shuffle or their ADD gets lost in the shuffle because ADD girls kind of operate at the speed of very active boys. And I was a perfectionist. I was a people pleaser. I ran on the shy, anxious side. And so a lot of my ADD things weren't super obvious. But I remember classes like history where I would be reading a page and just, I would get so down on myself because I'm like, I've been sitting here reading this textbook and I've retained literally none of this. Like what king started what war in 1400s? Like literally don't know, don't remember. I read it 5 minutes ago. But I was a straight A student. And so I figured out how to study for the test instead of studying to retain information. So I still got really good grades. I also kind of self-medicated with sports and activities. So I took all AP classes. I was in club soccer and regular soccer, and I was just always doing so many things. And so now as an adult looking back, I realized I was busy with lots of different things. So my brain could jump around in all productive ways. And I was running and exercising a lot, which is the best thing we can do for an ADHD brain is have exercise and movement. So, and then college and deadlines and professors and, everything was fine. It wasn't until I think I'd had my second child where I just felt like I don't have the structure of deadlines. Like nobody's breathing down my neck if I did my case notes on time. Like nobody, like I don't have this structure, but I'm constantly frustrated at the messes that I leave behind. I would do things all the time. And quick side note, my grandma was this like small, feisty firecracker. And one of her favorite sayings was, you can get away with anything if you hold your head up high and have a smile on your face. And I've used that like my whole entire life. And I cannot tell you the number of times I've just gone up to a woman in the parking lot and I'm like, hi, do you have an extra diaper in that diaper bag? I don't have any. Like the number of times other moms, like we band together and I'm like, I'm going to pay it forward. Thanks for having my back. And like moms are so great and so wonderful. But like the number of times that I would forget to put extra diapers in my bag or wipes or forgot to grab this thing. Or even as a kid, I went to a private school that was 45 minutes away from my house. And the number of times that my mom had to run to Target before school started because I got in the car without shoes on. And even as an adult, I was joking with my friends a couple years ago. I like left a girls' night and then I texted my friend and I was like, whoops, drove home without shoes. Did I leave my shoes at your house? And she's like, literally, how does that happen? You were 36 years old. And I'm like, I don't know. I just sometimes show up without shoes.
They there?
Why is that
but
weird?
Are they there?
But are they there? Yes, they are. Cool. Bring those to me tomorrow. And then another big part of my journey, I recognize I have a lot of ADD in my family. And I recognize that my oldest daughter was probably displaying some ADD things. So I think like many adult women, we're interested in figuring out the puzzle for our children. And then we solve the puzzle for ourselves. And so I read a book that I love called Driven to Distraction. And it made so much sense. He has a list of criteria and I was literally 20 of 21 criteria. I was like, yep, check, 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 check. But he does such a beautiful job in that book of explaining how ADD develops and really explaining how much it's a superpower. And so the analogy that he uses that I love is that like having an ADD brain is like having a turbocharged engine. So it's incredibly powerful. We just don't have great brakes. So if we can figure out how to drive this turbocharged car well, then it's going to be amazing. We are capable of doing things that so many neurotypical brains can't. We just have to figure out how to program in some natural brakes so that we're not driving 90 miles an hour around the curves. We can slow down when we need to, and we can ramp up when we need to, and have this beautiful balance and then achieve a lot.
Yeah, no, I love that. I always think of like with, let's go ahead and before I say this, let's go ahead and describe the differences between ADHD and ADD.
Yes. So my understanding is that it's ADHD, but sometimes we have the hyperactive part and sometimes we don't. So the H stands for hyperactivity. So attention deficit, hyperactivity, in parentheses, disorder. Another takeaway from the book is that it's not really attention deficit. It's just attention mismanagement. Because one of the central hallmarks of the ADHD brain is that we're very distractible sometimes and also hyper-focused other times. So my hyper-focus fortunately came out in being obsessed about grades and trying to get a 4.0 and taking all AP classes and really trying hard at soccer. So it's not necessarily that you just can't focus, but it's sometimes you focus too much for too long on the wrong thing. And so it's just attention mismanagement. It's not that you don't have the ability to maintain attention.
Yeah, I love that. I love the attention mismanagement. That makes so much sense for me, personally. How can recognizing and addressing ADHD symptoms change your approach or our approach to work and family life? Like, how does that impact us?
Yes, I think it's huge, because if we can recognize, like, this is not a me problem, I don't need to feel shame about it. It's just an area that my brain struggles. Then we can figure out alternate solutions. Because even like you said, like my Post-it notes, to my journal, to my to-do list, to my Trello board, like how often do we try the same strategies over and over and over and over again that we know are not going to work for us, but everybody else says this is what you should do. And so then we keep trying it and we keep failing at it and we keep feeling bad about ourselves, instead of saying, that's actually not going to work for my brain, so I'm going to figure out a different strategy. So one of my favorite ways that I've implemented this recently is recognizing that ADD is also, it's attention mismanagement, but it's also dopamine misfiring. And dopamine is one of our happy chemicals that makes us feel proud and accomplished and engaged. And when we cross something off of our to-do list, when we're in the zone, we have a lot of dopamine. And the second book, let me back up for a second. My ADD brain's jumping around. The second book.
It's okay. I'm following you.
And everybody that's listening to this podcast is too, or that needs this podcast. Okay. So the first book that I loved, Driven to Distraction, 20 years later, the same authors just came out with another book called ADHD 2.0 that I love. So I highly recommend read both of those books. But one of the nuggets that I took out of ADHD 2.0 is this idea of the dopamine. And in the tasks that you are procrastinating, those things that you leave to the end, that you push off, that you don't want to do those tasks, there's no dopamine in that. And so instead of me feeling bad that my room is a wreck, or I only started 80% of the project and didn't finish it through, I just make peace with myself and say, you know what? There's no dopamine in that for me. There's no dopamine in case notes. There's no dopamine in submitting paperwork so somebody can get insurance reimbursement. There's no dopamine in me logging on to the patient portal to pay a medical bill from a medical thing that I wish I didn't have to deal with anyway. But there's no dopamine in that. And so instead of just procrastinating and feeling bad, I'm going to say there's no dopamine in this. And I'm not actually going to get it done unless I can bake in some dopamine. So that looks like finding dopamine while I'm doing the thing, or giving myself rewards along the way, or prizes for getting something done. You can literally tell yourself, I'm going to give myself $1 once I get this bill paid. And you might be pulling the dollar out of your own wallet and putting it in a different pocket. And I swear to you, it works. Or I have like a little, one of those like shiatsu massagers. And so I'll like specifically, like, I need to hop on the phone and sit on hold for 30 minutes while I try to schedule this appointment for my kids. I'm going to use this back massager while I'm making that phone call. Or I had a whole stack of calls, return calls that I needed to make. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go get a pedicure while I tackled the things on my to-do list where there is no dopamine. I need to bake some in. And then I get the dopamine hit of, oh my gosh, I just tackled that thing on my to-do list. But I had to do an alternate strategy. Otherwise, I would do probably what we all do, is wait until the last minute, until there's so much stress, until it's urgent. And then I'll get it done and I'll feel like I finally just escaped from the bear, and I'm going to vow to be more on top of it next time. And guess what? I'm not going to.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
So if you can identify, if you can identify the areas where your ADHD brain just has some weaknesses, make peace with it and figure out a better strategy to compensate. you'll be more productive. You'll be able to override and overcome a lot of your ADHD pitfalls. And most importantly, you'll be able to kick the shame that is associated with having a brain that just operates differently.
Yeah. I know for me, I end up going into exactly what you just said. I go into, okay, I'm not going to do Post-it notes. I'm not going to do Post-it notes. And then I grab a Post-it note and write down whatever the hell I'm going to write down. And it's like, okay, I'm going to go from Post-it notes to creating a list. And I'm just going to do all of the things on the list. And one thing that I blamed all of this chaos on is I don't have time. Like you know this, I'm speaking to the choir, but like my schedule is freaking bananas. Like it's so crazy, and I want to make sure that I'm off, I'm out of the office and I'm with my kids or with my husband and I'm intentional with that time. And I look at like all the things that I have to do and it's like, well, shit, like that's the other part, especially when we're talking about high achieving women. There's so much that we put on our plates. There's no, like, if we look at our calendars, there's no way humanly possible we'd be able to get those things done anyway. So what have you done to navigate that?
Yeah, I have gotten really good again at accepting that in myself and figuring out like, how do I actually manage this chaos, which for me is recognizing that I actually thrive on the chaos. I really, really love to have a lot of balls in the air. It makes me feel empowered. It makes me feel confident. It makes me feel excited and energized. And so one solution is like, calm the hell down and stop saying yes to everything. But then I like have more time on my hands. And so I'm just like compulsively like reading books and watching shows or like making more messes.
We fill in the time.
And so instead I've realized I actually really like to have a lot of things going on. I'm going to bake in deep, deep pauses regularly. So like a full day at the spa once a month or once a quarter, or, last year we did that weekend trip that we're like, what? We are hardworking women. Let's carve out a weekend and just get away. And I think we need to reschedule that.
We totally need to do that again. We'll talk about that offline. Totally.
But I realize I thrive with the chaos. I love to do things that I'm good at. And fortunately, I'm in a position, as are probably many high achieving women, where it's like, you know what? If I keep doing what I'm great at, I can earn enough to pay for somebody else to be my support. Yes. And so every time I hire somebody, I'm very clear with them. I'm like, look, I am going to be super grateful. I'm going to pay you well. I aim to be the best boss that you've ever had. And you're probably actually going to be my boss. And you're going to need to keep track of everything that I need to do.
This is so true.
And I'm going to need you to send me reminders, and I'm going to need you to send me lots of reminders. And I'm going to need you to like get mad at me sometimes, but like not too mad at me or else I'm going to get offended. But like,
don't get crazy.
Don't get crazy. But like, your job is to keep me in check. So all of the things that I'm not good at, I pay somebody else to be good at them. And then I can just keep doing everything that I'm great at and just make sure that the things that I'm great at make enough to support the lifestyle and not having to deal with details that there is no dopamine in that. Because one session of therapy is going to pay for somebody else to be my taskmaster for 5 hours. And that is worth it to me. So I've let go of the like, because I should be able to figure this out on my own, then I will. It's like, no, there's actually no dopamine in figuring that out on my own. I hate it. I'm not good at it. I'm never going to be good at it. And so I'm just not gonna. And I'm going to be great at what I'm great at.
Yeah. I felt, I'm so glad you bring that up. I remember with an assistant I had, I remember she's like, holy shit, Veronica, because I would just text her like all of the things that need to get done. And I am very, very, I tend to be very creative, not creative like drawing or like decorating. I wish, but mine is more like with business and ideas. And how to connect and how to create more things, more revenue. And as as things are happening, obviously she didn't have the business phone on her. Thank God, thank goodness. But like, as I'm thinking about ideas or thinking about restructuring or systems or whatever, I'm like sending text messages. And I remember it got to a point where she's like, okay, whoa, like, I'd send her stuff and then I wouldn't follow up with her. And then in the shower or like at 2:00 in the morning after having sex with my husband, it's like, hold on, wait a minute. This, like this, did she do this? I don't know if she did this. Holy shit. And there I am sending a text message. Right. And I remember I ended up having to have that conversation. Like, listen, I wish I wish I was like all of your other bosses. And I remember feeling so ashamed at first, like, okay, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be like the leader and the owner of this practice, and I'm supposed to have my shit together. And I remember having that conversation. I was embarrassed at first, like, listen, my brain just doesn't work that way, and if I send you shit, like, I need you to organize it and put it somewhere. And then when we meet, I need you to like literally run the meeting where and this is how I want you to run it. I want you to tell me, these are the things I've done. These are the things I'm still working on, and then ask me, what are my deadlines, or ask me what you need help with, because I'm going to keep on adding more. But at the same time, I'm going to keep on repeating and sending these text messages unless I know it's done. And so I need you to create a system that works with me and my brain and just me overall. And I noticed that once she started doing that, holy shit, everything started. I felt like I was getting so much shit done, Chrissy.
Yes.
Like, so I was like, I am getting this. I mean, obviously the team was getting it done, but it required me to be uncomfortable and admit that this wasn't working for me, and allow myself to be humble. It doesn't matter if we're the owner. It doesn't matter if we're like a high level executive. It's okay that our brains are working. My assistant actually loved to go ahead and create systems. This allowed her to be creative, exactly. And then I would compliment her on it because I'm like, holy shit, this is amazing. I would have never created this. It would have been on my Post-it note.
Yeah, totally. 100%. Yes. Yeah. And really the word that you used is such a key part of ADHD management. It is systems. We can create a system for any of it. ADHD people thrive with systems, and we need new systems all the time because inevitably we're going to come up with a system and it's going to work really, really well for like maybe 3 months if we're lucky. And then we're going to stop implementing said system and it's all going to break down, and we're going to actually need a slightly different system the next time. And that's okay. We just bake that into our understanding of like, I am constantly on the prowl for a system that can work, truly with a heavy emphasis on where's the dopamine, where is the reward in this? How can I break this into smaller pieces? Even giving myself a check on a to-do list is a small dopamine hit. And so I've also realized with myself that like there's actually more dopamine for me in writing a note on a Post-it note or writing things down on paper. I would much rather have something written on paper that I physically draw a check or a line through it than clicking the dot on my phone that checks it off. There's not as much dopamine in tapping on the screen that says I checked this off as there is in physically checking it off. So you know what? I have ClickUp for my team and I'm still a paper and pencil girl, and I will send a picture of here's the Post-it note that I have with my scribbles. Here's the random piece of paper. Somebody put this in ClickUp and then tell me when it's due.
ClickUp. So that's an app you use?
Yeah, it's kind of like Trello. If you have
like
Trello,
another fucking system, Veronica, another system.
Another system you're not going to use. Yes, that's one of them. But I actually really like ClickUp. I like it a little more than Trello. I think it's friendlier for teams. But again, it's just a desire at a system to keep things organized. And really, it's the tool that my team uses to keep me organized. And one of my favorite things that they've done, which I think is the hallmark of an ADD boss, is they have a place where they can compile future ideas and then figure out when I'm sending the texts, or we use Slack to communicate, which I love because I can send something at 2:00 in the morning and they're online when they're online. And so I don't ever have to worry that I'm bugging them. But then it's like, hey, when I get this random idea in the shower that I think would be awesome, it's their responsibility to jot that down. Let's chat about it for a second so we can, do a think tank about it. But then we're going to conscientiously put that on the back burner, finish up some of the projects that we're currently working on. And then in 3 months, when we're done with this one, we're going to look back at that and be like, hey, this was a really great idea we had last quarter. Do we want to pursue it now? So that I don't have to be constantly thinking about like, when is that going to happen? When is that going to happen? When is that going to happen? And have them be frustrated that like, hi, I'm managing the 15 other things that you told me to do. Like, what do you want from me? Right?
Yeah, no, definitely. So what are we looking for with regards to symptoms?
Yes. Okay. I actually pulled up, this is not from me. This is from Driven to Distraction. But some of the things, I'm just going to run through them real fast, if that's okay.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
A sense of underachievement. So kind of constantly feeling like you haven't met your goals, even though you're actually accomplishing a lot. Difficulty getting organized, chronic procrastination or trouble getting started, many projects going simultaneously, trouble with follow through, a tendency to say what comes to mind without necessarily considering the timing or appropriateness. So that's what we call verbal impulsivity, of like, I just say things before I think sometimes.
Sorry. I still love you though.
It just crossed my mind.
Sorry.
A frequent search for high stimulation. Again, that's another part of the dopamine mismanagement, because our brain isn't getting that steady drip of dopamine. So then we're dopamine seeking, either in thrills or chasing a new idea or starting a new business or sugar or alcohol or drugs or whatever it might be. Like, oh, more. This would be fun. That would be fun. Intolerance of boredom, easy distractibility, often creative, intuitive, and highly intelligent. This one I thought was so interesting. Trouble in going through established channels or following proper procedure. I'm such a perfectionist and like a people pleaser, and I'm a rule follower until I think it's like, this is a dumb rule, and so I'm just going to do it my way. And like, please don't tell me what to do. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Sometimes impatient, low tolerance for frustration. If you're a mom, I would kind of add to that like sensory overload, or getting overstimulated when, I come home from work and I have 4 small girls that are like, mom. And I'm like, okay, take some deep breaths. This is very overstimulating. Impulsive, either verbally or in action. Tendency to worry needlessly. This one's really interesting. That is a takeaway that I got from ADHD 2.0. So he talks about how we have these 2 different parts of our brain. We have the default mode network, which is where we do our curiosity, our daydreaming, our thinking, our scheming. And then we have our task positive network, when you're like actively engaged in a task and you're in the zone. In a typical brain, the default mode network turns down or stops when we're task positive. In an ADHD brain, the default mode network never really turns off. And so if you are prone to depression or anxiety or insecurities, the default mode network just churns and churns on anxious thoughts or a mistake that you made or something embarrassing you did. So that's why ADHD people can often have a lot of insecurity or anxiety. It's because that default mode network isn't turning off. And so I would say the antidote for that would then be like using the default mode network to scheme about things, to be excited about new projects.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. I thought you might have to edit that out because I think it connected to my phone and not the computer.
All right, Elizabeth, we're going to go ahead and edit this part out. Elizabeth, edit that part out.
Sorry. Okay, so along those lines, a sense of insecurity, sometimes mood swings. People with ADHD often can have some depression or anxiety co-occurring. Restlessness, tendency toward addictive behavior. Again, that's in that constant kind of dopamine seeking. difficulty with self-esteem, inaccurate self-observation, either over insecurity, or I noticed with my 11-year-old, she has trouble hearing people's boundaries if she really wants something. So she's 11. So if like she wants to be the boss of how the game is played and her sisters are like, no, let's do this. No, let's do that. She has a tendency to like, no. Let's blah, 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 blah. And they're like, Maddie, stop, Maddie, stop, Maddie, stop. So she kind of a little bit of a breakdown in like, how are other people perceiving me? Family history of ADD. And that's it. So those are the 20 criteria that he has. It's in some like actual measure. But I thought that quick list, I was like, oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah. The whole, I'm listening to you read them off and I'm like, holy shit, check. There's a couple where it's like, okay, yeah, I forgot on the, I forgot what test it was, but I tested like being a high achiever. And then my weakness was that I'm just like, okay, fuck it. We're just going to go and we'll figure it out on the way. Like, I'm not afraid. Like, let's just make this shit happen. We'll build it. We'll figure it out. We'll build it. We'll buy it. Let's just go. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do have those moments where I'll have a conversation with somebody or, maybe a team meeting or whatever. And I'm like, did I come across like, was it okay that I said that? There's a little bit of that self-doubt that comes up and it's like, okay. And it's one of those things where I've learned how to go into like a whole little therapy session for myself. What are your thoughts? Is it distorted? Challenge that distorted thought. What's happening for you emotionally? What's your physiological response? And so I'll kind of go through that just to check myself and bring myself back from that like constant perpetual cycle. Let's go ahead and talk about what has worked for you. And ladies, as you're listening to this, obviously we want to make sure that you are not self-diagnosing. You have two therapists that should not self-diagnose either, but you know what? We can't help it. Okay. We cannot help it. Right. So for you, definitely. Well, before I answer that, who would you recommend that they go to? Would you recommend that they go to a psychiatrist? I'm a little iffy with our primary care provider for like 50,000 reasons.
Yeah, I would say go to a psychiatrist. There are tests that you can do. So if you're on the fence, we don't have to jump straight to stimulant medication. But yes, a psychiatrist is the person that you should talk to if you're wondering.
And then what have you tried that you're like, you know what? This has worked for me. It's been so helpful. And what was a complete waste of your time?
Yes, great question. Stimulant medications are far and away the best way to treat ADHD. They actually talk about that in ADHD 2.0, that like it's always like they talk about that in ADHD. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I was I was repeating what you were saying.
So they talk about that.
People should not be talking.
So they talk about this in ADHD 2.0. They're like, 20 years ago, we said that stimulant medications were the best course of treatment. We have 20 more years of research and stimulant medications are still the best course of treatment. I tried Adderall and I will tell you, the first day that I took Adderall was one of the happiest, most peaceful days of my life. It was just like awe and wonder of like, I can feel this good. This is amazing. So I think we all kind of want to, I don't want to have to take medication. Stimulants, that feels so scary, but the thing that I like about stimulant medications is it doesn't take a long time to build up in your system. It doesn't take a long time to get out of your system. It's one of those medications that like you try it. And if it's the right fit, literally that day or in your first week, you're going to feel a difference. So I'm more in the camp of like, if it's a control variable and we can turn that dial and see what we see, why wouldn't we just add that into the repertoire? A couple other things that I thought were interesting from ADHD 2.0, he talks about how helpful movement is, especially resistance type things. So running, like the pounding on the pavement or push pull type exercises, movement is Yes. Movement is number one, the best all natural medication for anxiety. And then balance exercises. It's really
Really?
good to just get our brain kind of lined up. And so get one of those, what's it called? Like a Bosu ball
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
like,
I have one. It's like a half of it, and then it's like a
yeah,
teetering thingy, like
exactly.
looks like Mars. Is
Yes,
it Mars? Is it Mars with this circle thing?
probably. But
Whatever.
yes.
Whatever.
Yes. So balance on things. Do exercises where like you just stand on one foot, instead of sitting down when you put your shoes and socks on, like balance on one foot when you put your shoe on and tie it.
Yeah.
This is a fun way to implement good strategies with kids. You could do different games that require balance and coordination and just little mini challenges. What was a complete waste of time?
Because you hear of like, what is that? Neurobiofeedback. What other things?
So I did neurofeedback with Maddie. I didn't see great results. She also was 11, so she doesn't have a ton of self-awareness. And so it was hard to assess like how much is this helping? I know in the data, they haven't found a lot of great longevity with neurofeedback and ADD. That being said, it's still something that I'm pursuing. I've actually found a lot of benefit in other areas with neurofeedback. And so I'm not totally throwing it out, but I'm very cautiously optimistic. A lot of supplements that say they can help with brain focus, they're just loaded with caffeine. Although fish oil and B vitamins can be good for the ADHD brain, but I just think be careful in the supplement world because nobody's checking that it actually has what it says it has in it, and everybody can say anything.
Yeah, no, 1000%. So definitely want to be aware of your time because I know you're a busy woman. What message of hope can you offer to our listeners who might be feeling overwhelmed by the demands of motherhood, career, and personal challenges?
Just do your best. There is literally an unending to-do list. So find peace in embracing that you are not going to get it all done. Let go of that expectation. Like every day is just a fun game with yourself to see how much you can do. Like have fun with it. One of my pieces of advice that I give to all clients of mine that are moms is write a master list of everything that you need to do, everything that gets done, everything that you're in charge of. And then take things off that master list and put it in one of three columns. I do it, somebody else does it, or it doesn't get done. What usually happens is the I do it list is completely unreasonable and literally impossible and is filled with shame. The somebody else does it is either full of resentment because they're not going to, or full of shame because I should be able to manage it. And if I'm asking somebody else to do it, then it means that I'm not good enough. And then the it doesn't get done list is like the list of failure. Right.
Yeah.
And so instead, if we can proactively look at, oh my gosh, this is not manageable. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put this on the it doesn't get done list. I am going to conscientiously and lovingly release myself from that obligation because realistically it wasn't going to get done anyway. And now I'm just not going to feel bad about it. And then really dive into how do I empower my support system? How do I get my partner to pick up slack? How do I delegate some of this to my kids? How do I outsource different things, whether it's carpooling with friends, whether it's finding a meal delivery service, cleaners, whatever it might be. My number one life hack, it sounds so bougie, but I hate cooking. And so I have a guy that delivers food. He cooks for us 4 nights a week. He delivers it twice a week. It is $190 a week for my family of 7. Like literally it would cost me more in groceries every week to make those dinners, not to mention the time and all of the things. And so I think women make a mistake in saying like, I can't possibly outsource that. I can't afford it. and truly work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
Before I had my guy that makes my meals, I did a meal swap with friends. And so I was only cooking once every 3 weeks because we did this
Yeah.
meal swap. And so like there's always a way to delegate. You don't have to have endless money to be able to find systems and get stuff off your to-do list so that you can focus on the things that you're good at.
And opening up
Yes.
and being honest about this, because you're going to find that other women are struggling with this as well. That has been such a blessing for me. I think you and I, when we went over to your house and we were just going over like some of the things that we were struggling with, and Willie's just kind of looking at both of us like we're crazy. And then we're like, you want to go to Terranea? You want to go here? You want to, yeah, that sounds great. And there we are booking our vacation. And it's like, sorry, Willie, you're not invited, but it was so helpful because there was so much validation in that conversation and just being open and honest about where I was currently at. And then hearing on your end where you were currently at. And it was like, oh my gosh, you mean that we're both here together and we're both suffering silently, and yet we can both do something about it. And you and I met, we got together, we had our weekend getaway at this like extravagant bougie ass hotel. It was so much fun. And we got so much peace and relaxation, but we got so much work done. We both accomplished our goals.
Yes.
We both accomplished our goals from it.
Yes. Which is so, right? It's like, that's one of my big takeaways from Slow Down School, that retreat that we did together years and years ago, is like actually slow down so you can ramp up. And I feel like that's what we did in Terranea, is we actually built in deep pause and break. And then when it was time to crush it, we just crushed it.
We nailed it. Where can the women find more information about you, the Peaceful Sleeper, and the Peaceful Mind Counseling Center?
Yeah. So the peacefulmindcounseling.com is the best place to find me. If you have sleep issues, find me at thepeacefulsleeper.com, especially if your sleep issues are because of a sweet little baby of yours that is not sleeping. And then coming soon is Las Vegas Center for Psychedelic Therapy. So I'm already working with ketamine and waiting for legalization to go through for psilocybin and MDMA. But I'm really, really, really excited about that new frontier of mental health treatment.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I am so happy. Congratulations. Congratulations. You're doing it, Chrissy. You're totally doing it. I'm so proud of you. So proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Where can we find you on social media? Sorry, before I forget.
On Instagram at The Peaceful Sleeper, the.peaceful.sleeper.
Awesome. Thank you again, Chrissy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. We'll see ya.